I acknowledge that we meet today on the land of the Gadigal people of the Inaugural Nation and pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I also extend this respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today. I stand here before you today as the newly elected member for Camden. I am incredibly proud and honoured by the faith and responsibility bestowed on me by my community. Before I tell you about the Camden electorate, I'd like to take this moment to thank the previous member, Mr. Peter Sidgreaves. Peter, thank you for your service to the community through Camden Council, being Mayor of Camden, and through State Parliament. I would also like to thank my friends and previous members, Chris Patterson and Jeff Corrigan. Chris, from the first time you coached my son's under-6s soccer team, you have been a wealth of knowledge and experience. Jeff, you have been my political mentor and friend, and your never-ending support during the campaign was such a boost, particularly on those hard days. I will always turn to you for guidance and a dose of reality, but I promise not to disturb your morning swim or your golf game. Camden has had a long history of bringing people together. As the boundary area for three great Aboriginal tribes, those of the Darul, Darug and Gundungurra peoples, the region has served as a natural trading and festival space, with the Cumberland Plains fauna creating the perfect location for meetings and corroborees. Mount Annan was known to these Aboriginal tribes as Yandalora, which means the place to lay down your weapons and gather in peace. I like the sound of that. When British settlers arrived, they effectively, and in some cases brutally, drove those people off their land, but not before witnessing a corroboree of more than 400 participants and spectators in 1820. It's perfunctory to outline an area's Aboriginal history at the start of one's speech and then move on to a more modern or current narrative, as if 60,000 years is somehow less time than 230. And while this speech will also follow a chronological order, I want to make it clear I do not view Camden's Aboriginal culture as historical footnote. Occupation was not the end, but rather another chapter, a chapter that is necessary to understand the modern Camden. I view Aboriginal culture in Camden today as a continuum from yesterday, a history that is still being retold or created anew via initiatives such as Camden's terrific Indigenous football program at Camden Tigers and the very moving yearly commemoration of the Appin Massacre. When Governor Hunter noticed a group of cows naturally gathering in one location in 1795, he coined the phrase cow pastures, and we've been naming roads this ever since. More importantly, this is the name of our park run, held every Saturday for free. That in the 21st century we continue to cite local features after Hunter's witty observation shows our ongoing connection to the past. But the story of Camden does not start with cows or wool. We have a long and treasured, yet sad and disrespected Aboriginal history. I very much hope that during my time as Camden's local member, I can play a small part in increasing awareness of the truth of our Aboriginal history and further the endeavours of reconciliation. Many people have spoken about the influence of John MacArthur during Camden's colonial settlement period, but today I would like to turn the spotlight on the unsung hero, Elizabeth MacArthur. She married John in England in 1788 and relocated to Australia a year later. After her husband's forced eviction from the colony in 1809, Elizabeth was compelled to take over the business interests, including the care and management of their sheep flock at Camden Park. Her management and business acumen were such that she strengthened their wool product to a point where eventually MacArthur Reno competed in the lucrative British wool markets. Elizabeth MacArthur was able, in a time when women were considered to be merely ornamental, and while her husband was in exile, to tend, manage, and build a business, all while raising 8 children. When her husband died in 1834, she worked with her sons to create the township of Camden, and her legacy was immortalised with her namesake granddaughter, Elizabeth MacArthur Onslow, who brought dairy farming to the area. Today, I become one of a long list of women contributors to the living history of the Camden area, like St Mary MacKillop, patron saint of Australia, who established a local Catholic school, the very school my children attended. Although I can only attempt in some way to be as influential to the area as these great women, I know I look to draw immense inspiration from them. When Dorothea McKellar wrote My Country, she might have been speaking of us, because I haven't had a more intimate experience of droughts and flooding rains like in Camden. The Nepean River, which dominates our landscape, also dominates our lives at certain times of the year. I don't need to remind you of the devastating floods we endured just a year ago. During times of disasters, we often witness people at their best, such as when the community came together to help businesses like Camden Sports Club replace new equipment and flooring due to a major flood in March, only for an even larger flood to occur in April, resulting in even worse damage. This resulted in a further call to arms, answered again by volunteers. A story comes to mind that encapsulates this time for me. In March 2022, the floodwaters were expected to rise during the night, but the speed of the rising waters shocked everyone. A local farmer was distraught to wake and find his flock of cows, many of whom were pregnant, were missing. The cows, some of whom had given birth in distress during the night, proceeded to swim through the floodwaters at the town farm and were located on the safest land they could find, the playground at Camden Public School. One calf had taken a wrong turn and was stranded on the grandstand at Onslow Oval, eventually being rescued by residents in a tinny. The relieved farmer then walked the flock down the street to the delight of local school children. In a fitting tribute to the annual Walking of Livestock the Other Direction to Camden show, the town managed to find some enjoyment amidst the chaos and fear. This is what Camden people are like. We're only a 2-hour drive from the CBD of Sydney, a fact that will come up later in my speech. And I challenge any member here today to name an area with more cafes per capita than Camden. We have fantastic music groups and festivals, restaurants, pubs, a botanical garden, historic homes, and farmers markets. Our incredible Anzac Day our incredible Anzac Day service were informed that they are the largest outside the metropolitan area, with over 20,000 people in attendance. While we also boast a $4 lemonade, which was pointed out to me only a couple of days ago. You can't get that in many places anymore. There is a great deal of historical content regarding Camden, and the excellent walking tour provided by the Historical Society down splendid Argyle Street with its Victorian and Edwardian buildings, or the beautiful vistas framed with either spring jacaranda purple or the autumn foliage as you approach from the north, should not be the only reason to visit. In former times, we would have also spoken about El Caballo Blanco and Oran Park Raceway as destination points. But Camden has fundamentally changed since then and continues to change apace. Camden is the perfect mix of Sydney suburbia and country town, something we need to fiercely protect so that future generations can continue to see the link with our past. I did not grow up in Camden. In fact, I've only lived there for 15 years, meaning I have another 3 generations to go before I'm a local. I grew up in the St George area, Connells Point to be exact, and I had an idyllic childhood. When my father turned 80, I did some rudimentary family research and discovered I was a descendant of Thomas Tegg, who sailed out from London to start a book printing business like his father before him. For many years, the New South Wales Almanac was written and printed by Thomas Tegg, with copies held in the State Library just next door. In 1913, my great-grandfather, Henry Weston Tegg, then a local alderman in Maitland, was hailed as a hero for rescuing people during the Great Flood of the region in his tinny. The links to Camden are inescapable. This flood not only took the life of my great-aunt, but caused my grandmother and grandfather to move to Sydney, settling in Brighton Les Sands. My father grew up to be an electrician and later a lighting technician on film sets. He loved making movies and interacting with legends of the screen, and would always make sure you knew exactly who he'd worked with, including Ava Gardner, Robert Mitchum, and Anthony Perkins of Psycho fame. He was incredibly proud of making Don Quixote with Rudolph Nureyev, Ned Kelly with Mick Jagger, Picnic at Hanging Rock with Peter Weir, and Storm Boy with his favourite actor of all time, David Gulpilil. He would happily tell stories about his time on set. He spent many months away from home, but no one ever doubted the great love of his life was my mum. As boisterous and confident as my dad was, he was balanced by my gentle and quiet mother. We kids always knew that no matter what happened, we were in real trouble if we upset mum. My mum comes from a long line of strong women, a true feminist with a cheeky streak. I recall a meeting my parents had with the architects when they were designing the renovations on our home. My mother asked if it was possible to remove the kitchen. She didn't like cooking, and an electric fry pan and microwave was all she needed. Was there any way we could renovate it into another bedroom? After several minutes of quietly explaining how this would affect the resale value of their home, Mum acquiesced and revealed she was only kidding, but no one was ever truly sure. My nan, my mum's mum, was brilliant and a true matriarch of the family. She descended from Sir Rowland Hill, creator of the penny post. Quick-witted, sharp of tongue, and a devotee of the great Labor Prime Minister Ben Chifley, she disliked fools and children equally. Both Nan and Mum were famous at Scrabble, and the Friday game was something to behold. My mother constantly played with words, creating shortcuts for everything. If you were asked to P the D before you C the C and G to B, it meant you needed to pack the dishwasher before you close the curtains and go to bed. She always keeps you on your toes. A late baby in the household, I was a bit of a surprise, but I couldn't have been luckier. After my birth, my father retired from the film industry and started his own business, the Film Vault, allowing him more time with his beloved family. After attending St Vincent's College, a school with an impressive alumni present today in this chamber, I started my music teaching degree at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music. I was keen to quickly complete my teaching degree so I could progress into the postgrad opera degree. But as soon as I stepped into the classroom, I was hooked. Teaching quickly became my passion, and I began tutoring piano and singing. I also discovered a passion for representing my fellow students, becoming president of the student union. That last couple of paragraphs explains why I'd be much more comfortable singing this for you today than I am speaking it. Then, in 1998, two things happened that would change my life forever. The first thing was having a snow skiing accident that would result in a long stay in St George Hospital. I also met my future husband, Damien. Once again, the flamboyant and loud would be matched with the quiet and strong. The next couple of years were a whirlwind of getting my teaching degree, getting married, and moving to England, where we spent nearly 2 years working and travelling. The subsequent period involved us moving back to Australia, setting up home in Camden, and raising 3 wonderful children. In 2012, I started a business, Bandemonium, with a close friend, delivering instrumental education to students throughout Sydney. At our peak, we were teaching 1,500 students in 30 schools across state, Catholic and independent systems. From Bundanoon to St Ives, I witnessed teachers stretched to their limit and looking for a way out. And too many of them have found that exit ticket. Being a union rep for the Independent Education Union at my beloved St Anthony of Padua Catholic College meant that I heard stories of the problem teachers were facing daily. But it was when I started door knocking my local suburbs that I heard stories from the greater community. One day when I was out door knocking, I walked up to a nondescript house. The young woman who answered the door was clearly unwell and started the conversation by apologising that she was still in her pyjamas. After assuring her that I would be in my pyjamas given half a chance, I introduced myself and explained why I was there. She proceeded to tell me that she'd recently been admitted to Campbelltown Hospital by ambulance after fainting. She talked highly about the care she received by the paramedics and hospital staff, but mentioned that her primary issue, which turned out to be an infection, was exacerbated by the staff not having a chance to read her mental health file. A mental health file that was created in that very same hospital and included the need for daily antipsychosis medication. This lady, who was very quick to assure me was not violent or needy, went from being an easy treatment to spending, at that stage, 2 weeks recovering both in emergency and at home, unable to work or even drag herself outside to get food. Our hospitals are overstretched. We have fantastic staff who are working beyond their limits. This lady demonstrated how easy it is to slip through the cracks of overworked and overtired hospital staff, and that the necessity of managing the mental health needs of our community are changing our triage priorities. Camden has had unprecedented growth in the past decade. We are welcoming new residents weekly, which is wonderful. However, our infrastructure is not coping. During the 2022 floods, it became increasingly clear that a single road in and out of the area was not adequate. And the fact that it can take more than 2 hours to get to Sydney is a major problem. Many people I have spoken to are commuting daily for over 1.5 hours each way. We know this affects family life and community engagement. We need more schools, access to healthcare and emergency services. Moving to the area should not result in a punishment for a lack of infrastructure. It's no longer adequate for the people of Camden to continually be leaving the area for employment, sporting events, and to enjoy the arts. The new Western Sydney Airport does provide an outstanding opportunity for Camden and the Greater Southwest to be more self-sufficient, but we must ensure it's not just a tarmac surrounded by more residential roofs. Madam Speaker, I request an extension on time.
The member requests an extension of time. Is the extension granted? Yes.
Thank you. My journey has not been taken alone, and there are many people involved in my being here speaking to you today. There are too many to thank today. However, I would be negligent not to mention a couple of exceptions. Mark Buttigieg, MLC, has been a supporter of Camden and an integral part of my campaign. His nearly daily adventures accompanying me door knocking was greatly appreciated. I would also like to publicly acknowledge the Premier and Deputy Premier for your encouragement, kindness, and unfailing support. It meant more than you will ever know. To Liam Rankin and James Callow, thank you for helping me keep Camden in the conversation when no one else believed. To my parents-in-law, Sylvia and Peter, thank you for your never-ending support, love, and encouragement. You have been such a support I cannot mention. Thank you to some key branch volunteers, many of whom are here today. Brian and Anne, Melinda, Jason, Monica, Eliza and Ash, Jack, Adam, Rick and Deborah, all who worked tirelessly over many hot months. Also, thank you to the volunteers and family who helped during pre-poll and on election day. Thank you to the wonderful firefighters, teachers and nurses who encouraged me to keep going during the campaign. People such as Hewan and Steve, you all have a special place in my heart, and we carry on this privileged task together. But without doubt, the greatest thanks need to go to my family, to my children, Benjamin, Molly, and Grace. Thank you for sharing me with the community. To Damien, my greatest supporter of all, you have always had more faith in me than I've had in myself. I could have not navigated the last 6 months without you. We had a plan, we tirelessly executed that plan, and the result is this inaugural speech. Your calm, organised demeanour helped me manoeuvre the roller coaster of local campaigning and life in general. I find myself asking, what is the point of a local member in an age when constituents can tweet the Premier personally? And they do. The answer, I believe, is local representation. Listening to people, meeting people where they are, participating in their successes, their disappointments, their sadness. It's advocacy for those who struggle to advocate for themselves. I've spent my life fighting for my students and their families. I've fought for the neurodivergent, trauma victims and their carers. But nothing prepared me for the mother I met in Currans Hill who cannot find a school for her son with autism. Her stories of his frustrated outbursts when trying to cope with the mainstream system will stay with me for the rest of my life. She works with the school whom she highly praises to teach her son to read, but he needs specialist help, and we don't have enough places. Parents like her don't have time for advocacy. They're just keeping their heads above water. They don't have time for lengthy submissions. They're too busy trying to hold down a job while managing various therapy visits and doctor assessments. They need support, and they need people who are willing to speak on their behalf. This is the type of local member I intend to be. Someone who is willing to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. A voice for the silent. A voice for Camden. I thank my colleagues for their indulgence this afternoon.